Thank you. Hey everyone, I'm Michael McGee. This is Philip Taffet. We're developers on the Firedancer team. For those of you that haven't heard the good news, Frankendancer is alive. We're running on mainnet. We have been for a while. We're slowly acquiring stake. We now have a little bit over 5%. We're also, turns out, really, really fast. Going to show you a couple charts that prove that. Here we have a view of, I don't know if you can see that, but this is showing the worst 10% of blocks produced by each client every day. We have Frankendancer in blue, Agave different versions here in green and yellow. You can see that even we're under incredible stress, Frankendancer is still cruising, still able to produce really good blocks. Second graph here is showing the highest stress event probably on the chain in recent memory, the Trump token launch around January 20 there. Again, Frankendancer in blue. We're monitoring a lot of our live Frankendancer nodes that day. Didn't see a single transaction drop during TPU ingress. Scheduled really well. As a result, we're able to capture a lot more fees and increase revenue for the chain. There's one more chart I want to show you. This is showing the TPS of Solana over the past 6 months, the user transactions here in blue. And this is kind of a problem when you try to spot it. I'll give you a second. If it wasn't obvious, the problem is that nothing has changed, right? We keep coming here and talking about performance, standing up on stage, but Frankendancer may be fast. Solana, at least currently, in our view, is not. It turns out there is a CU limit that you've heard a lot about. It's placed on blocks. It restricts what you can do, and we're subject to this. So Agave, as you keep hearing, has to get fast before the chain gets faster too. So what are we doing while we wait? Well, our team hasn't been asleep. We're not doing nothing. I'm going to turn it over to Philip to talk about some of the cool stuff we're up to.
Thanks, Michael. So I'm going to walk you guys through a bit of a journey of how we've made Frankendancer so fast and then how we're reacting to this C limit and what we're doing with the C limit as it is. And I'll start with Frankendancer as it was way back when we first started, back in late 2022 and early 2023. We had the Firedancer front end, which would ingest transactions and could ingest transactions at line rate, 1 million TPS, we'll call it 10 billion CUs per second. And we were using the then Solana Labs code for execution, which couldn't execute anywhere close to that, especially at the time. And so we'd funnel all the transactions through PAC, which would sub-select the most lucrative ones, come up with a parallelism-aware schedule, and then feed them to the Solana Labs code for execution. But this design had a big problem, which was that our PAC fed into the Solana Labs PAC, which meant that we were still subject to all the gumming up of locks that the Solana Labs code had at the time, which would result in dropped transactions, underfilled blocks, and really limited our scalability. If we wanted to improve performance, there wasn't much we could do. So we spent months and months re-architecting this system and putting our PAC in charge. So instead of dripping the transactions at a fixed rate of 48 million CUs per 400 milliseconds to some Solana Labs code, we scheduled transactions to individual execution threads. And this let us scale wide. So if there was enough parallelism in the transaction mix, we could keep a bunch of execution threads busy and increase execution rate and scale the whole system to 1 million TPS. But PAC was still a big bottleneck in this code. And so we spent a lot of time profiling, optimizing, and improving our code. And one of the optimizations we added was the fast bit sets for conflict detection. One of PAC's main jobs is to tell when 2 transactions can run concurrently. So we have the green transaction, which writes to account A and reads from account B, and the blue transaction, which also writes to account A and reads from account C. Those 2 transactions can't run at the same time because they would conflict on account A. So it basically boils down to a lot of set intersection problems. But if you've ever looked at a block in mainnet, you know that there's a specific distribution of accounts. Some accounts are referenced a lot more than other accounts. So we added an optimization to PAC where it would automatically detect the popular accounts and assign them one of a few hundred bits in a bit set. Here you can see A, B, C, and D all get assigned bits. And then for each transaction, we build two individual bit sets, the write bit set and the read bit set, setting the appropriate corresponding bit to the accounts that are read and written. And then when we're checking if two transactions conflict, we first check the bit sets, which can be done with a few cheap AVX instructions and maybe like a dozen CPU cycles, just a few nanoseconds. And we can immediately rule out a lot of transactions. Of course, this doesn't catch everything, and it might not catch two transactions that conflict on an unpopular account. So we still do the full set intersection check before we pack it, but this improves the performance in the common case quite a bit. So with optimizations like this and a bunch of other optimizations, we got our whole system running, pretty fast. And so when we finally turned it on to mainnet, we expected great things. And what did we find? Well, the earliest versions of Frankendancer actually didn't make the operators very much in revenue. That maximum performance does not yield maximum profit in today's CU-bound world. This was a bit of a shock for us, and Michael and I in particular spent a lot of time looking into this, trying to understand what was going on, trying to figure out what we could do to address it. And a tool that we found really helpful for understanding this is the graph that I'm showing up here. So on the x-axis, we have time as the block progresses, from in milliseconds from 0 to 400 milliseconds. And on the y-axis, we have the CUs that we've consumed at that point. Right now, the max is 50 milliseconds, as Brendan was talking about, so the y-axis goes up to 50. So our initial strategy was something like this. Pack as fast as possible, almost assuming that there's no CU limit, and then rather than end the block in 200 milliseconds, just sit, do nothing, and be idle for the rest of the block. It's almost like we thought we were running a 100-meter dash, and bam, we smashed into a fence that we didn't know about a quarter of the way through, and then we just are stunned. And the fence here is the CU limit. And the reason this has a problem is, say that there's a transaction that arrives towards the end of the block, and it consumes maybe 1 million CUs, and this is maybe the last of our rotation in our group of 4, and it pays a high priority fee. So we really wish that we could pack it, but if it arrives at 100 milliseconds before the end of the block, well, we can't pack it because we've already consumed the space, and there's no more space for it in the block. So we just left some money on the table. From this, we started realizing that we needed to, in order to pack well, we needed to do more than just pack fast. We needed to pack intelligently. And this helped us come up with one of the first of our Goldilocks rules for packing well that I'll talk about, which is don't pack too fast. And actually, for our team, this came as a bit of a shock. We had spent years, or a year and a half, optimizing every component, tweaking, tuning, and every fiber in our body wanted to refuse adding this throttling code to deliberately slow down our execution. But we were staring at data that we couldn't refute, that packing fast was not the best strategy with a CU limit in place. So then, if we're not packing too fast, what do we do instead? Well, one thought we had was to kind of do the flip of that, to just wait until the last possible second, and then pack with as fast as possible with as much parallelism, as many execution threads, and fill up the block at the last second. But how long is as long as possible to wait? Do we wait here or there? And the thing is, no matter what we pick, not all CUs are the same. This is another point that we've argued a lot about maybe just getting rid of the CU model entirely. But it may take 300 milliseconds to execute 50 million CUs, or it may take it may take 100, or it may take 200. And so if we start packing too late, we may end up underfilling the block. So this gave us the second of our Goldilocks rules, which was don't pack too slowly either. If we, again, kind of like a vague notion that if we're in this red region, then we're probably not going to be able to fill the block before the time runs out. But this still left us with a big white region in the middle that we had to figure out how to navigate. And to the third Goldilocks rule, which helped us navigate that, to see that, first we're going to zoom in to the end of the block. And let's suppose we're in the good case for CU execution rate. And say we have space in the block for 2 transactions left, and we have 3 that we can pick from. We have the green one, which pays a high priority fee and writes to account A. We have the blue one, which pays a similarly high priority fee and also writes to account A. And we have the gray one, which pays a much lower priority fee, but writes to account B. Well, if we're packing with maximum amount of parallelism, the first thing we'll do is consider the green transaction, and we'll take it. We'll schedule it. And then, as I was talking about in the bit set conflict detection, the next thing we'll do is check the blue transaction, and we'll see that it conflicts. So we'll skip it. And then we'll go to the gray transaction, and it doesn't conflict, so we'll take that. And that ends the block. We executed 2 transactions. We had space for 2, and we're done. But you can see that that actually wasn't the best strategy. We would have, a better strategy would have been to execute the green transaction, wait for it to end, and then execute the blue transaction afterwards. Then we would have still filled up our space, 2 transactions, but we would have captured more in priority fees. This was the start of our realization that parallelism can actually be our enemy for capturing high priority fees. That every time we skip the most lucrative transaction because it conflicts with another transaction and then don't end up scheduling it later, we just left money on the table. And so we realized that with one execution thread, we could often capture executing only with one execution thread was always safe. We never skip transactions due to account conflicts if we were just executing with one thread. And in fact, with one Frankendancer execution thread, we can sometimes, execute somewhere between 60 and 45 million CUs in 400 milliseconds. So often one thread is enough, depending on the transaction mix. And this also gave us a way to refine our fuzzy notion of too fast. We knew that if we could execute from the point, like the current point, and fill the rest of the block with just one execution thread and have time to spare left over at the end, then we were executing too fast and we needed to pause execution for just a few milliseconds. So you can see our progress line with this, every time it intersects the too fast region, we pause execution, still ingest new transactions, but we wait before we execute more so that we can sample more transactions that are coming in. But life isn't always so rosy, and as I was mentioning, not all CUs are executed or can be executed at the same rate. So what happens if we end up with just one execution thread in the too slow region and we end up underfilling the block? Well, the thing is, we could have seen that this problem was happening much earlier on, maybe 200 milliseconds into the block or even earlier, and known that we needed to do something about it, that we were in danger of underfilling the block. And what we could do about it is crank up the execution speed by using more execution threads. This might result in using a little bit more parallelism than we would have liked, but at least the block will be filled in the end. And combining all this and thinking a little bit more rigorously about our too fast and too slow and how to integrate parallelism into this, we realized that actually it's not just that the too fast region is some like big bad mean wolf or something. That it's that when we're in that region, the optimal thing to do is to use 0 threads for execution. And that gives us those flat horizontal lines, which is what we were looking for. And if we're in the green region, then the optimal thing to do is to use 1 execution thread, yellow 2 and orange 3 and so on. And this integrates nicely all these 3 Goldilocks rules and lets us ensures that we don't pack too fast and we use just a right amount of parallelism we need to ensure that we don't pack too slowly. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Michael to show the results of this trade-off of packing fast for packing smart and show some live demos.
Thanks, Philip. So the end result of all of that is not just that Frankendancer is fast, it's intelligent. Here you can see the fees per landed block on the chain. This is real data from mainnet a week ago. These are priority fees. So Frankendancer really doing super well here. It's kind of an interesting juxtaposition, like Agave is getting faster, we're getting slower. But we may not be able to pack bigger blocks right now, but we'll certainly pack better ones. We may be restricted in the performance we can put out, but we're going to do the best we can in the performance we're given and earn more in fees, capture more value from the chain. The other thing is we're extremely ready, right? The CU limit, we know it's a problem. ARNS is attacking that aggressively. We work on this every day. It's kind of like every problem on this chain somehow ends up being this CU limit, whether it's a drop transaction, it's a bug, an unfilled block, that's a mistake. And like anytime you, I got like a bad episode of Scooby-Doo, anytime you pull the mask off, it's always like this same problem underneath. So watch that space really quickly. We're kind of running out of time, but I want to do a few really quick demos just to show some of the cool stuff we've been up to too. Here we have, make this a bit bigger, the Frankendancer GUI that you all know and love. A couple of things I just want to point out. The system's totally idle. We're running here live on mainnet. Nothing is doing anything. These green lines at the bottom are the CPU cores, and they're all pretty much 0% busy. You can actually look. We're not leader right now. You can look at when we were leader. Let's look at a recent slot we produced. System's still idle. So you can see pack basically doing nothing. The only thing that's actually doing anything is POH, because it's producing hashes constantly. Even our banks. Here, look. We have 4 CPU cores dedicated to executing transactions. We used one of them to build the entire leader block. The other thing I want you to know is this buffered list here. This is the transactions that didn't make it into the block because we didn't have space. There's a lot of capacity on the chain. Often it's much higher than that. Scroll down. This chain and this validator aren't just for us, they're for you, like everyone in this audience, right? We want the users to understand what happened in their transaction, the validators to understand what went into their block, the developers to be able to build mods and get an understanding of the system really easily. And so we decided, why not build this visualization Philip just showed into the validator. Here it is, live a block we produced. The pink is the compute units throughout the block, going up to 400 milliseconds. The yellow is how many banks we used. You can see we never exceed 1. We're lazily executing the entire mainnet block here on 1 CPU core, if even that. That's not all. I really want to kind of give you a taste of the power and flexibility of Firedancer and the architecture we're building. Here, if we scroll down, you'll see something even cooler. This is live from the validator on mainnet, a slot a few minutes ago. Every transaction we considered and did or didn't put into the block. You can filter it. Let's look at just the votes, right? All of these are happening just on bank 1. You can see the other banks are all idle. What if we want to see more? Let's zoom in. Here is every single vote getting individually executed by this validator one by one and taking 3 microseconds. It's not all. We really kind of trying to build this for you guys. Here we can view the fees, the tips, the income per CU, the CUs that are requested and consumed, just from bundles, not from bundles, ones that landed, ones that didn't. Why didn't they land? Was the block hash processed or not? So this is all coming live to a Frankendancer GUI soon, near you. We could stop there, but we won't. We collect a bunch of data internally to track the performance of the validator. We want to make sure it's doing well. That's how we showed you those charts earlier. We track everything. Size of the blocks, speed of the blocks, how many CUs, how many fees, so on. Decided to just make this all live because why not? So we put it up on the internet. You can go see it, reports.firedancer.io. It's live right now. Here we're showing so the community can kind of understand and compare the performance of all of the validators, all of the versions, all of the clients. So just a quick demo, like here we can sort by average compute units of each validator, average fee, total income, vote performance, missed votes, vote latency. We have versions, clients, and then here, all of the validators. So we hope you guys get to use all of that. One other thing, we could stop there, we won't. Last little piece, and we ran way over time. We know it's a huge lift to switch to a new validator. You guys already have a whole operational setup. You've bought hardware that's specific to Agave. There's a ton of things that go on. There's operational expertise. So we recognize that that's difficult, and people take a chance when they switch and try something new. So today we're also launching the Firedancer delegation program, delegation.firedancer.io. We'll be sitting this with a bunch of Sol and matching and staking people that are running Firedancer and Frankendancer validators. So that wraps it up. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.